Hello, I'm Mantastic and Fantastic, and today I'm going to be talking about the farmable sacred and cursed keys that are occurring during the Sin Dragon Key Heroes event. So, this is a tremendously large and exciting event, not only because it has a strong rare machine component, but because there is a wonderful array of farmable cards to be acquired. And generally speaking, farmable cards tend to be a little weaker compared to the rare machine counterparts because, well, you can acquire them with time and hard work. But in this case here, many of these cards are quite competitive, and they're definitely worth you going out of your way and spending stamina and farming repeatedly to try and acquire the drops to evolve these sacred and cursed keys, because they can be evolved into various weapon assists. In fact, there are 10 different weapon assists to be had. From the sacred keys, they all have unique active skills, but from the cursed keys section, they actually have the same active skill as their rare machine Sin Dragon counterpart. And you might think, well, it's the same active and probably weaker awakenings, but not necessarily. There still is some value in acquiring them, as well as many of those active skills actually being desirable, and thus justification enough for the drawbacks that they may incur. If you are looking for the rare machine component review of this event, it is in a separate video and article, so take a look there if you're interested. But for the most part, if you are interested in acquiring these farmable cards, which you should be, you will acquire one sacred key and one cursed key from logging in, as well as completing the Sin Dragon Rush dungeon, which you'll probably do anyways, and then another pair of these keys in the future, like partway through the event, you'll get another pair. And then every subsequent key you wish to purchase can be done so for 100,000 monster points. Now, at this point in time, monster points are really not doing that much, and there are many players out there who have acquired far too many. And if that is the case, keep buying keys liberally as you acquire the evolution materials to evolve them, because, well, your monster points aren't doing anything sitting there, and these weapon assists will provide value. Just be aware that the cursed keys all will feature these negative stat awakenings of either negative health, negative attack, or negative RCV. So let's just jump right into the sacred keys. So for the first sacred keys, I'm oftentimes just going to be calling them by their color. So the fire sacred key provides 400 plus attack to the owning card, as well as granting a 300 times button to all enemies. And that's tremendously powerful because 300 times buttons tend to be almost a longer cooldown, but they only most of the time hit a single enemy, whereas this one here hits all enemies. So the value of having a button that hits all enemies is you can execute multiple spawns on a single floor. And the fact that it adds plus 400 attack means the owning card gets another boost to how much their button actually deals for damage. Now, button farming is not necessarily for everyone, and it does have a 20 turn cooldown along with this HP reset, so you obviously need to be careful if there is a preemptive on the next floor, but it also means you cannot repeatedly use the same button over and over again because it is quite strong. Because if you're already at 1 health, you can't use this active and change your health from 1 to 1. It just is not allowed, but it's still worth acquiring because it's such a large button that hits multiple enemies. And if at some point you're able to obviously heal, you can obviously bring a second of these buttons. But the main benefit of button farming is that it's faster. It's brainless. It requires less time, less energy, and less effort. But oftentimes you need to play this in co-op mode because 20 turns is going to be difficult to manage, especially when you have to inherit it on top of another card. But if you play in co-op with yourself or a friend, you'll be able to easily acquire these skill boosts, stick this on a character with high attack, big button damage, clearing the dungeon with ease. And because of this, I highly recommend you at least acquire one of these fire sacred keys. For the water sacred key, it provides you with 20% resist to blind, jammer, and poison, which is relatively generic. It's a relatively old archetype for awakenings. We had the Trojan horse, which was probably used by most players that have been playing for a prolonged period of time to cover the various 20% resists. So I feel like because of that, and because of the much more accessible cost in acquiring a Trojan horse, it's not worth pursuing this weapon assist unless you really feel that this 2-turn delay or 2 turns of 100% defense break can be valuable. So the 2 turns of delay can be utilized as 2 effective skill boosts, but there are stronger delay or effective skill boost weapon assist solutions out there. And the defense break, it's primarily going to be helpful in Training Arena 2 if you're playing it through with a team that doesn't do as much damage. Now, with that being said, these are just recommendations for myself. If you find that any of these weapon assists are significantly more powerful and helpful, it is definitely worth pursuing because your monster box is going to look different than mine. But as a general blanket statement, I feel like this weapon assist is lacking, mostly because stronger options exist for whatever metrics it does try to address. On the other hand, the wood sacred key is one of the best ones to have. It's definitely in the top 2 you should be making with the fire button one, maybe even the first one, especially if you are a newer player, because this weapon assist provides 1 turn of damage absorb void, or a Fujin style active skill, and 50% damage reduction. But it's a Fujin style active skill that is farmable and on a 13 turn cooldown, and no true drawback. There's no like HP nerfing, there's no RCV nerfing, there's no drawback here. So this is an exceptionally short cooldown for an active skill you have to have in basically any relevant dungeon nowadays, because if you encounter a damage absorb spawn, you will never be able to overcome them. But if you have this weapon assist, you can overcome them. So I strongly recommend you go out of your way to acquire one of these wood sacred keys, because a damage absorption active on a 13 turn cooldown is going to be helpful for basically every single player out there. And the only real drawback is you have to farm for it. Oh no. The next light sacred key has the ability to greatly bolster the healing output of a certain card. You have an enhanced hard orb, you have 2 team RCVs, and you do have a very short cooldown that can remove 3 turns of awoken binds. The problem with this weapon assist is that it's not high impact enough, and in my opinion, you can just simply pursue Dorothy's Shoes, which is a farmable weapon assist. And this farmable weapon assist has a much longer base cooldown, which in turn makes it easier to avoid accidentally charging up, because charging up to this is going to be undesirable. It's a low impact active. It's not doing enough. So Dorothy's Shoes overcomes that. It's like a 43 turn cooldown. It's not going to charge up without your consent. And it also provides an enhanced hard orb and a team RCV, along with a 20% jammer and blind. Whether you use those resists or not, may not happen, but it's going to be a very strong, similarly performing alternative to this, as well as the fact that Dorothy's Shoes have better weighted stats and huge RCV, so it might even help the owning card, especially if they're light based. Point of the matter is we have alternatives for this, because farming for these weapon assists is going to take time, effort, and stamina. So you may not be able to actually acquire enough to make every single one, and it's a matter of prioritizing which ones you find are going to provide the most value, and I feel like this one will not be providing as much value, especially compared to the wood one. Now, finally, for the last sacred key, the dark one, it provides with some orb enhances, so light and dark teams can gain some benefits, but this active skill provides 2 turns of attribute absorb void. Now, attribute absorb has become more dangerous over time, because newer content tends to feature this absorb and be either very difficult to stall against, or maybe even impossible to kill against, because it lasts for such a long time. And because of that, it becomes much more relevant to have a way to overcome color absorb mechanics. Now, at this point in time, I feel like color absorb is still only truly dangerous in content such as Altarina 4 with Yomi Dragon, and Shura Realm with all the Manoas, and potentially Denbola as well. But the point is, color absorb is not necessarily something you need right away, especially if you're like an earlier mid-game player. It's going to be nice to have. It's still going to be useful to actually farm this weapon assist, because this effect is quite strong. And the fact that it comes with a bicolor board changer is beneficial, especially if you're running mono, light, or dark teams, because if this active skill charges up, and if you never encounter this color absorb spawn, bam, you have a bicolor board, which is easy to solve and probably going to overcome lots of your problems at the same time. It obviously has some drawbacks if you're farming, if you're using it as a farming solution to overcome color absorb, because it creates a bicolor board that may not be helpful for the team you're using, but that's just something to keep in the back of your mind. So either way, it's still worth pursuing, but may not be as high priority necessarily as the green or red one. And now we come to the cursed keys. So all the cursed keys will feature an active skill that is shared by one of the rare machine Sin Dragons. So that means there is some overlap to a certain degree, but the awakenings provided here will differ from the weapon assists of the Sin Dragons in the rare machine. But to compensate for this farmable aspect, each of these cursed keys will have at least one negative stat awakening of either negative 2,500 health, negative 1,000 attack, or negative 2,000 RCV. So generally speaking, negative attack is the easiest one to work around. It is the least punishing of all these stats because of the way we team build. Because right now, the most popular way to team build is you have damage-oriented cards on your team who are like 777 combo or attack while below 2%, lots of BDPs. They do the damage on your team. And then you have supportive-oriented cards where they have no personal damage awakenings. They probably have an abysmal attack stat, or they're even off-type or off-color, so they're just existing for their awakenings and their active skill. And a beautiful example of this is Paulone, who is one of the most universally helpful supportive cards. Her attack stat is irrelevant. She doesn't do any meaningful damage. So if you have a weapon assist with a negative attack and you can stick it on Paulone, it's going to be great because you just basically overcome all the negative aspects of that awakening. By comparison, negative RCV is unbelievably punishing. I'm not sure why it's 2,000 value, because if we go by weighted stats, attack is worth 5 points, RCV is worth 3 points. So attack should be technically a higher penalty compared to RCV for keeping the stats in line, but that's not the case. 2,000 RCV is a massive amount, and your cards can go into negative RCV, so obviously that's a problem. But for a perspective of how crippling negative RCV is, negative 2,000 RCV is more RCV lost compared to your 2 leaders and 4 subs pluses. All their RCV pluses added together will still be less than this value. That's not really fair, because the attack stat, that only counts for 2 characters' attack pluses, so to speak. So it's just a proportionally punishing card. So just keep that in mind when looking at any of these cards, and make sure you have enough RCV to actually sustain yourself through a dungeon. So the first cursed key I want to look at is Lust or Fire, and it provides you with that negative attack, which I told you is the easiest to work around, along with a single skill boost and 4 fire rows. So pretty powerful weapon assist, because at this point in time we don't have many weapon assists with skill boost and fire rows, and obviously that's a boon to mono fire teams. But this active skill attached to this card provides 4 times attack for fire cards, 4 times movement time, and then charges all ally skills by 2. So 2 turns of haste. So this could be a 3 effective skill boost weapon assist if it's inherited on top of someone with a low enough base cooldown. But even if you cannot, you're still getting a skill boost in multiple rows and an active at the end of the dungeon for big burst and recycling your active skills so they recharge back up. There are not too many drawbacks in this weapon assist aside from obviously the negative attack stat. But again, if you are able to put it on someone whose offensive prowess is not required, it's an easy workaround solution. It's not gutting your health, it's not gutting your RCV, and this is definitely one of the cursed keys you should be pursuing, because it's a skill boost with offensive aspects and a powerful active skill, and inherited on someone of low cooldown, it's 3 effective skill boosts, which is basically like an Amatsu loot. Obviously not as great as Amatsu's loot, but pretty amazing overall, especially when you consider it is farmable. The Cursed Envy key provides a myriad of weird awakenings. You get a TPA, an L, and a super follow-up attack with negative health. So negative health can be at least worked around. But at first glance, these awakenings have no synergy, and they don't have synergy. Like, no team is going to need all these different types of awakenings, I feel. So what this weapon assist instead will be achieving is a ranking dungeon solution, because ranking dungeons award style points, and style points are one of the easiest ways to bolster your score at the end of the dungeon. And TPA, L, and super follow-up attack are all style point categories. And being able to throw a weapon assist on a single card and granting them access to all of these awakenings can potentially make your life easier. You might open up some different sub or inheritance possibilities. It just gives you flexibility. I don't think it's a particularly high priority key to make, but if you are truly gung-ho about ranking dungeons, this weapon assist can provide value there. Or if you find that you have no way to overcome voids, which I feel like it shouldn't be the case, this might have some merits for the 2 turns of void, damage void. Next is the Sloth key, and Sloth is one of the more powerful keys because the active skill is the same as the Rare Machine equivalent, because this active provides you with a full board unlock, changes all orbs to rainbow, removes all awoken bind and regular binds, and fully reduces all unable to match orb effects. So this is a jam-packed active skill with no true downside. A rainbow board, like, it's obviously not ideal for mono killer, but you still can get away with it. You might have some orbs. You definitely have heal orbs. You can heal at least change a board that may have been less favorable. But fully clearing bind and awoken binds and unable to match orb effects is tremendously valuable in current ending game content, because these mechanics are thrown everywhere in a dungeon, and being able to overcome those is meaningful. So having a farmable solution for that helps. Problem with this weapon assist is, well, it has negative health and negative RCV. So these are massive stat penalties that you must be able to navigate around. So you need to be obviously playing a team with strong healing output, and a team that can survive large attacks because they have enough effective health to withstand them. But in addition to these 2 components, the active skill and the negative awakenings, it also comes with Guard Break. So Guard Break, again, is another style point contender. It's also the first weapon assist with Guard Break. So throwing this on rainbow teams who don't have Guard Break can be a way for you to overcome these high defense, low health spawns, such as the latent Tamadras seen in AA4. Can be a possible solution there as well. So you got a jam-packed, powerful active skill along with a guard break, which might be helpful, or just for style points. Just be aware of the RCV and health penalties. But with that in mind, this is still one of the better keys to pursue, and it's worth making. Next, we come to the Pride Cursed key, and it provides you with a super poison resist, which is the only one of its kind. So you have 100% protection against poison abilities. Negative attack, which we said already is okay, but negative RCV is obviously problematic. So you obviously want to try and find a card to inherit that on who has obviously no attack, and you want to make sure your RCV can be compensated. And the super poison resist will save you lots of inheritance and sub compositions potentially. But another application for this weapon assist is actually the active skill found here, because the active skill is a 15 turn 15-15 board changer. Basically, on a 6x5 board, you're going to make 15 light, 15 hard orbs, and together you have a perfect 10 combos that should be easy to solve. There is an orb unlock component which does add animation time, but the fact that hearts are made does cut down on some animation. But the point of the matter is, this is a truly efficient way for overcoming ranking dungeons, because for those that heavily favor combo count, the strategy of utilizing a 10 combo board changer in conjunction with a forced 4-color Skyfall active is one of the most popular ways to bolster your score, because you can solve 10 combos incredibly fast. It's an easy to solve board, and then you're Skyfalling down 4 specific elements or colors, and you're having a much higher chance for several of those to actually match and thus inflate your combo count. So at the end of the day, you have a fast solve and incredibly high combo count with many Skyfall chances. It's an efficient ranking dungeon solution, and if you do not have magic lens or anything else equivalent, and you do care about ranking dungeons, this is a weapon assist you should be pursuing for that reason alone. And now we've come to the final cursed key of Gluttony. And Gluttony is a truly weird weapon assist, but I feel like it has applications for any team that utilizes the Kuro Yuri loop. And that is because this weapon assist provides you with negative RCV, negative attack, but 14 health. So at this point in time, the new red or fire Monster Hunter cards, Jiva, I can't pronounce the name, only cares about your health stat, because they're using Kuro Yuri loop because they basically have no RCV. So this negative RCV means nothing to them. But with a Kuro Yuri loop, they're able to restore 40% of their maximum health every single turn. And by adding in these massive amounts of team HPs, you're able to have a bigger health pool, which in turn means you have more recovery, which in turn you probably can just tank and survive many more hits with relative ease. So I feel like this weapon assist has the most applications on any team that utilizes a Kuro Yuri loop. But if you don't use a Kuro Yuri loop, it's not going to be that effective or magical otherwise, because the penalties of attack and RCV are not going to be helpful. But it's a niche case to use it. So if you do find yourself utilizing this leader or loving Kuro Yuri loop, or maybe you're thinking there's going to be a leader in the future that will abuse Kuro Yuri loop, this weapon assist will be meaningful because you increase your most important stat by a sizable amount. But if Kuro Yuri loop is not something you own, nor a playstyle you wish to pursue or play, this weapon assist will have significantly less value. So which keys to pursue? Because there are 10 different keys, and there's only a finite amount of stamina and time and possibly sanity to try and acquire all the evolution materials. So there should be a certain degree of prioritization, and these are going to be my own suggestions. I try to make them relatively blanket statements, but your own individual monster box personal goals and needs will trump whatever advice I am giving or anyone else gives, because what you need is not necessarily what other people need, but it's still helpful to keep an open mind. So for these sacred keys, I would say that the fire, wood, and dark key tend to be the most powerful and useful ones overall, with the wood sacred key able to provide you with that damage absorption ability. 13 turn damage absorption is incredibly powerful, and for a newer count, it might be your first Fujin active. It's probably going to be your shortest Fujin style active skill, and it's definitely worth pursuing. The fire one is a great and magical AoE button. If you are like mid-game or button farming, this is something you should be acquiring right away. And the dark key does provide you with 2 turns of two turns of color absorb void, which does become more helpful the further you progress in the game. For the cursed keys, the fire or lust one has the least number of drawbacks and I'd say the most number of benefits, and it's definitely worth pursuing even if you don't have a mono fire team at this exact time. In theory, you could use it on other colors and abuse that 2 turns of haste. Like, let's say you're playing Yomi Norza and you have to use Yuri as a sub. Well, you stick this weapon assist on top of Yuri. Yes, the fire rows go to waste, but the skill boost helps, and Yuri has a low 2 turn base cooldown plus the lust inherit, which means it will be ready before you can transform. So you can basically make Yuri now into... Basically, you can add 3 effective skill boosts onto this Yuri, even if it's off color for the Rose. You just added 3 more skill boosts than you could have done so with other cards. Transform, team building is much easier. Happy days overall. After that, I feel like the Wood Sloth Cursed Key is the next best one to make because it provides that amazingly strong active skill that clears all Awoken and binds and unable to match orb effects, along with having Guard Break, which is unique. Like, we can't replicate that elsewhere, so it might come in handy just for that alone. And then alternatively, the Pride's Key provides that 15-15 board, which if you are playing 4 ranking dungeons and you want to improve your scores but don't have magic lens, this can be a wonderful solution. It's not as powerful necessarily, but it's a great solution overall. So, in conclusion, the Sin Dragon and Key Heroes event is an exciting time, not only because it has strong rare machine cards, but because there are meaningful farmable cards to actually go out and acquire. And having meaningful farmable cards to acquire means you're going to be playing the game, which in my head is one of the goals. And you're playing it because there's a meaningful reward at the end. So, with that in mind, let me know what you think about the Sacred and Cursed Keys in this event. Which ones do you feel like you would prioritize making and pursuing, and how many of each do you plan to make? With that being said, hopefully you all have a fantastic day. I wish you all the best luck in your own pad adventures, and happy puzzling.